Our theme this month is empowerment. And my topic today is that there is always another opportunity. Just think how different your life would be if you remembered that. How different would our life be if we remembered that there was always another opportunity? And don't confuse another opportunity with another chance to do the same thing. I want to be perfectly clear. Now, you do have the opportunity sometimes to do the same thing, but there's always another opportunity. The opportunity may not be the same thing again. The other opportunity may not even be something that you're thinking of. It may not even be consciously something that you want. Okay? But there's always another opportunity. An opportunity. You know I like the dictionary. So, Webster describes an opportunity as a favorable or advantageous circumstance or combination of circumstances. It also defines opportunity as a chance for progress or advancement. Opportunity, a chance for progress or an advancement or some kind of way that there are combinations of things. As it says in Scripture, that all things are working together for good. I used to think that it meant that it would all, at the end, turn out all right. But the word that's being used here, the Greek word soon together, means actually in concert simultaneously. So as it's going along, it's coming together. This with is in concert with. It's happening at the same time, that all things are coming together for good. And right now, this is my practice. That depending on where I am in my life, that there are usually like 2 or 3 things that I am really working. And this is one of them that I'm really working, okay? Because I don't know about you, but particularly when I'm in an extra sensitive place in my life like I am now, things can really get on my nerves. I mean, like quickly. Really, really quickly. And I have to remind myself all the time that things are working together for good. That they are working together for good, to chill out, that there's some kind of way that not only is this okay, but there will be something good that comes out of this that's unsuspected that I cannot see. But furthermore, to let go of my expectations of what I thought needed to happen. We get real attached. We get real attached to our plans, our ideas, the way we think it ought to be. We are busy micromanaging God something fierce. We lay the plan out, and it's, okay, God, this is what I need you to do for me today. I need you to show up here, make this thing happen, make that thing happen, slow this thing down, open this door, do this, do that, and make sure I don't have to experience X, Y, and Z. There's, you know, I have this series out called Letters from the Infinite, which are literally these spirit downloads that come. There's 2 volumes of this published by Sounds True. And in one of the letters, these letters are kind of embarrassing sometimes because it's sort of like your therapist notes about you being put out in the public. Or about us collectively. And then there's this one letter where I'm so busted because the spirit voice is mimicking me whining. And it say, you know, can't you just go along with me, God, sometime? Just, can I get my way sometime. It's like, even if it's not like the right thing, you can always fix it later. Can't you just go along with me sometime? And I remember when I got that letter, and there was this long pause, and all of a sudden the voice said, well, no. I can't. But what it went on to explain is that Spirit's not going to collude, okay? I don't want us to confuse empowerment with the shadow side of enabling. We make enabling a bad word, but enabling in and of itself is not a bad word. To enable something to happen is not necessarily a bad thing. It's the shadow side of that, the shadow side of enabling. The shadow side of enabling is when we are colluding. The shadow side is when there are things that are out of alignment, that are not in harmony with life, where there are things that are detrimental and that take our spiritual vibration down and lower and lower and get us confused and get us into addiction or denial or like whatever our stuff is. And then there are ways in which we're using our power to assist people to stay in that, because we're usually getting some payoff from that too. Okay? That's not the kind of empowerment I'm talking about here. What I am talking about are things that are advantageous, things that are progressive, the things that move us forward. One of my teachers is Brother Ishmael Tete from the Ethereum Mission in Accra, Ghana. And, you know, we always love it when he's here in the United States and has a chance to come here. And being West African, he has a very, very close sense to nature and is quite the healer and herbalist. And he'll explain all the time, he says, everything you need to know is in nature. It really is. And I find that sometimes for those of us who are real cityfied, I grew up in LA, that we're so far from nature that we don't really have a chance to just see how life works. Literally just how life works. And if you grow up in a place like Los Angeles that I do, that's practically seasonless, that you don't even get a sense of what that means to have things change and transformation and newness and restoration and things to die off and come back. And you don't even just like get a sense of that. We're just sort of creating, crafting our life, just, you know, you're captain of your ship and you're just putting your boat in the water at any old time. Well, any sailor knows there's a time to put your boat in the water and there's a time not to. Any farmer can tell you there's a time to plant that seed and there's a time not to. There's a time to plant, there's a time to harvest, there's a time to sow, there's a time to reap. In all things, as it says in Scripture, for all things there are its seasons. And part of nature is this way where it knows, you know, we live here on the edge of the Pacific Ocean. And we just recently got through a full moon. You know, whenever there's a full moon, there's this big pullback, you know, of the tide. And whereas there might look like there's just a little bit of beach, when there's a full moon, it looks like the beach is 3 times as long. And it's this reminder to me sometimes that there's nothing but the earth, just some of it's underwater. The entire planet is connected. It's just that some of it's underwater. And that same thing happens with our lives. There's a tide in that comes up. Sometimes there's a tide out. Sometimes we can see a little bit more. Sometimes we can see a little bit less. Okay. Yeah, we're going to go there. I think I know how this relates, but we'll soon see. So this is not to step on anybody's theological toes, However, so one of my favorite biblical scholars is a guy named George Lamza. And Lamza lived back in the hills in Turkey as one of the Jews of the diaspora, the quote-unquote lost tribes, 20th century persona. And they were so far up that they weren't part of the modern world at all. So they lived as Jews who thought the Messiah had come. And when he came down to what we would call Western civilization, he was just aghast. But the thing is that they still spoke Aramaic. There's only about 250,000 people in the whole world, and that's Jesus' language. They still spoke Aramaic. And Aramaic only has 600 words in it. They recycle a lot of words, but they have really deep, rich meaning. And then he did this thing, which was just absolutely unprecedented. He took the earliest records that they had, an early text called the Peshitta, the scrolls were buried in different places, and we're still discovering, the Dead Sea Scrolls we found in the 40s, they're still discovering them. And he had some earlier records. So what he did is he took the Peshitta from Aramaic and the Hebrew that he knew into straight modern-day English without going through Latin and Greek and all these other translations. And it took him 40 years. I highly recommend his Bible. 40 years. And he said that the King James Version just had all these different just mistakes in it, just translation mistakes. And he got it down to 2,000. That as far as he's concerned, even in his book, because there's certain things that don't translate. But there was this wonderful observation he made, and he has a lot of works that are out on this. And he was describing it. He says that the story that we tell, and I can see what this has to do with opportunity, that the story that we tell about the story of the Exodus, the Israelites going out of Egypt into, quote-unquote, the Promised Land. And as the story goes, that Moses goes back and he tells the Pharaoh, let my people go. We have that image, not true. Moses stuttered. Moses didn't say all that. His brother Aaron did all the talking. They're negotiating, and finally when the Pharaoh lets them go, he tells them they only want to be gone for a few days to do ceremony or whatnot. And then when the Pharaoh figures out what's going on, he sends his army. He sends the chariots and whatnot after them. They've been gone a few days. So we hear this story about parting the Red Sea. And he does this whole map thing to say that that was a mistranslation. It wasn't the Red Sea, it was the Sea of Reeds. And that the Red Sea wouldn't even make sense from a geographic situation. And what he explained, and it just made so much sense, that idea of the parting of the sea, he says that when there's a full moon, the tide comes back. And it looks like the sea parts. It's like there's this wide area. And if you're traveling at night for a few days, you can get hundreds of thousands of people through this area because the sand is kind of impacted a little bit because the tide is back. He says, and what most likely happened is that by the time the chariots come along, the tide is coming back and they get stuck. The weightiness of their armor and the rest of that gets stuck in the mud there as the tide is coming back. And I thought, you know what? That just made a whole bunch of sense. It just made a whole bunch of sense. That there's a way in which, and I'm not rejoicing or anything in people drowning in the Red Sea. I'm not on that page. But as a story, there's always an opportunity. Here you have people who were enslaved, but there's something that got created that helped a window to get out of that. If you look at nature, Nature will not be denied. We live here in the Redwood Forest. And you can see around, if you go around to any of these forests, times where there have been fires, and how even the fires are a part of nature. They're part of nature. That they are a way that nature helps to control things, and that there are seeds in the ground that can't even crack open until there is that much heat. And where it looks like something just burned down and was devastated, guess what? It won't be a couple of months before there's moss on it. There will be growth. There will be new growth that's coming out of the charred wood. You can put cement on the ground, and there'll be a little blade of grass that's coming up from the cement. The leaves can all fall from the storm, but there's going to be something new that's going to come back the next time. Life will not be denied. I remember my first time that I went to a prison. I was just, the juxtaposition of it all. We're right looking up towards the tower where the guns are pointing down, were these spiraled barbed wires. And you know what was happening in the spiraled barbed wires? The birds were building their nests. And you're seeing these little faces coming up. And the mama birds feeding the little birds right there in the barbed wire of the prison is life happening in the nest. Okay? There is always an opportunity. God, the big is, whatever it is that you want to call it, it's pure energy. It's just energy. Energy is neither created nor destroyed. It only changes form. When things go out of your life, the only thing that goes out of your life is the thing. Love can't go out of your life. People can, love can't. I want you to really feel that. People can, but love can't. Love, peace, joy, power, prosperity, balance, wholeness, trust, truth, integrity, vitality, clarity. These are we make them stumbling blocks. These are the spiritual blocks. They are your DNA. It's the stuff that we're made out of. So there's always a way for that to express within you. I want you to really feel that. To express within you. No, it may not look like you want it to look like, but there is always an opportunity. If they take away the drums, you beat your thigh and make some music. If they shut you down and lock you up for life imprisonment, like Nelson Mandela, then you just make the Constitution in prison. There is nothing that can stop life from being life except you stopping. Except you. I hope I remember it because I'm hearing it in my head now. Langston Hughes is this famous African-American poet. And he has this very short poem called Mother to the Sun. Crystal Stairway, it's also known by. And she says, son, let me tell you, life for me ain't been no crystal stairway. It's had boards in it, and tacks, and carpets torn up, and places where there's been bare, and ain't been no light. But son, don't you sit down on the steps because it's getting kind of hard. And don't you fall now, because I's are still climbing. I's still going. And life for me ain't been no crystal stairway. There's always an opportunity. Everybody is redeemable. There are no throwaway anythings. Everybody is redeemable. Everybody is redeemable. And I'm not just talking about prison and those kinds of things. I'm talking about look in your life. Who are the people you want to get rid of? Who are the people you want to get away from? I'm just saying. But to keep somebody locked up, you got to stay in jail with them. I can't tell you how many parents tell me the reason why they don't want to ground their kids is because they don't want to be grounded with them. They don't want to have to stay home too. There's always an opportunity to renew, to restore, to begin again, because it's just the invisible something that if this way doesn't work, another one will open up. I want you to catch that. If you don't get that job, it will be another one. If you don't get to create something with this group, it'll be another one. If you don't do it this way, there will be something else. Your body changes. So maybe you can't dance anymore. But that doesn't mean you can't feel the music. That doesn't mean you can't be dancing inside of yourself. You can do a little chair dance right where you are. There's something that's always alive that's in us if we quit telling ourselves the story that it's over. It's over is a story. It's just a story. There is no over. There is no done. There is no down and out forever. When you hit the bottom, that can be your new ticket up. God's not hiding out. You can find God in the gutter. You can find God in the Himalayas. It's just a different journey. It's the same God, but you get to decide how low you have to go or how high you think you have to go before you give yourself permission. Before you give yourself permission, just say, I am that I am. And I'm enough as I am. That God loves me as I am. There's always another opportunity. Not only is life always giving us another opportunity, I contend that it is our responsibility to give each other opportunities without taking inventory. You know, Jesus was my main man. And he didn't ask people a whole bunch of questions about how they got there, why they were in need, what happened, who did what, how long has this been going on, have you done it before, did you know better? He didn't get stuck on all that. I want you to feel that. To what degree do people have to bear their souls worthy before you're willing to help them? To what degree do they have to pass your litmus tests before you're willing to open up a door or share something or just give somebody a break or just tell somebody else who can give them a break? There are all these different ways that we can help and provide opportunities, and I guarantee you somebody did it for you. Somebody has opened doors for you. Okay? We think sometimes it can't happen till it's done. You know what? If I go back to this Exodus story, in the story, nobody who left captivity made it into the promised land. They all died along the way in those 39 years. This is metaphor. I don't care how you think of it, but just hang with me here. The only you that makes it into the promised land is the you that's born on the journey. Not the you that was stuck in your circumstance, but the you that's born on the journey. You say, well, I don't have what it takes to get that next leg. I don't have what it takes to enter that promise. I don't have what it takes. No, you don't. But you will. You don't. But you will as you go along. Do you feel that? You will as you go along. If you go to school, you don't have to take the final exam before you take the course. And we're like sitting there worried, oh, I don't know how I'm going to pass that test. You ain't even enrolled yet. Worrying about the test. Go to school. Take the class. You'll be ready for the test when it gets there. That's how we do with life. I don't know how I'm going to make it. I don't know how I'm going to work my way through this. Just start. Just do it. And every step of the way, I want you to really feel that. What you need at every step of the way, the opportunities will be there for you when you need them. In this Exodus story, they had to rely on manna from heaven. It was this stuff that came from the sky, landed on the ground. It was this gooey, sticky stuff. And the word manna literally means, what is it? Literally means, what is it? Okay? So this stuff would come every day. Did you catch what I'm saying here? And there would be enough for everybody that day. Your whole family that day. Jesus is Lord's Prayer, give us this day our daily bread, is a spinoff from this. Okay? But you couldn't get tomorrow's manna. It couldn't be stored, couldn't be saved. You had to rely on it being provided every single day. And you got a double portion before the Sabbath, so you didn't have to work and gather on the Sabbath. Catch this. The opportunity for your fulfillment, your needs, are provided day to day. Give us this day. Give us this day. Your opportunities are here today. So many of us are passing up the opportunities today because we're waiting for the big one over here. We're passing up the opportunities to give love today because it's not the big one. It's not the right relationship. Maybe it's just a little child that needs your love. You're fixated on the big romantic relationship, but maybe it's your old auntie that needs your love this day. We're waiting for the big thing. We're waiting for the big job. But maybe, the recording contract, maybe you're just supposed to sing to somebody and make them feel a little better right where they are. There are things that are available to us every single day. Don't waste the opportunities that are here for you today, waiting for tomorrow. A couple of, Tuesday before last, I spoke for the Agape International Center, their ministerial school, as one of the guest lecturers in their homiletics class. Homiletics is the study of sermon giving. And I was sharing with them something that my mentor, Beckwith, taught me years ago. He said, you know what? And I'm not saying people shouldn't prepare, but I got to understand what he was saying. He said what he finally figured out is if he spent all day Saturday preparing his sermon for Sunday, then he wasn't available for what needed to happen on Saturday. And that he just learned to trust that when Sunday came along, whatever God wanted to be said for Sunday was there on Sunday, but he wouldn't pass up what God wanted him to do on Saturday, freaking out that he wouldn't be ready on Sunday. Can you feel that? always an opportunity. They're just always. And as I close, I feel moved to do a couple of tributes. One, I was very remiss last weekend, and I didn't acknowledge the veterans in the house. We had Veterans Day. Can I have all the vets please stand? Vets and those in active duty. Please stand. You've served. You've served. And it kind of reminds me of parenting. We can have a whole bunch of ideas about how to parent and what people should do and whatnot, but if somebody actually makes it through as a parent, they like deserve a hand. And the other is, I want to acknowledge someone who, to me, really has been the epitome of empowerment, and particularly in my own personal life. So let me be self-indulgent for about 3 minutes. As a young 16-year-old freshman at USC, I was terribly, terribly, terribly closeted. Pentecostal. I was so closeted that when the gay union was first starting, this is 1972, this was a little bit right after Stonewall, they had these tables that were there advertising the flyers of things that were going on. So I went by and I deliberately knocked them off on the ground so I could pick one up and not be noticed. But I freaked out and left everything on the ground, and I came back in the middle of the night and took a flyer off of a tree. And then I freaked because the gay group was meeting at the religious center, which technically was off campus, but smack in the middle of campus. And deciding I couldn't handle that, I started going to the gay, it wasn't gay and lesbian, it was the Gay Community Services Center, which at the time was just a couple of Victorian houses next to each other with some beanbag chairs. That's all that was there, okay? And now it's like the biggest gay organization in the world, and I had a chance to serve on its board. And there I met somebody. I met somebody who befriended me. And we just became really, really close. We've been housemates. Her family was very fundamentalist like mine, but they were a little further along in terms of it, and they just brought me in. I never had a sister, but this person has been like a sister to me and has pushed me forward. There's hardly an opportunity that I can think of, honestly, that took me to the next level that somehow or another she didn't do. Whatever it was, the camera, you know, my story out in the public, or business opportunities or whatever. You know, there's just people who believe in you, and they just always do. So we've been hanging tight now since 1972. And I'm just so proud of her. She's one of my very best friends. She's in the house. I'm about to bring her up here in a second. She was the nation's first African-American sexologist. She's Dr. Sylvia Rue. We affectionately call her Tibby. And she now is Bishop Yvette Flunder's executive assistant. Bishop Flunder was just up here doing the eulogy for Sister Monica Parker's memorial service. Can you help me in welcoming one of my bestest buddies in the world? Tibby, come here. She has such an illustrious career as a social justice activist, a change agent, my big sis. You want to say anything? She has quite the career and credits in her own right. Can you want to just say anything?
Well, I'm just getting over bronchitis. That's why I've been coughing. I want to thank you for being my friend since 1972. And I also didn't have a sister, and Deborah became my sister. And we have been through everything you could possibly think of, except perishing in an earthquake. We haven't done that yet. We're not going to do that. But I lived in Los Angeles. I lived in Washington, D.C., and I moved up here. I've always wanted to live up here. I live in Hercules now. And I've always loved Northern California more than Southern California. My brother lived here for 25 years, and so I'm just glad to have the opportunity to be up north where I really belong. Mm-hmm. And I do work for Bishop Yvette Flunder, which is an honor, but also an honor to know Reverend Deborah Johnson for over 40 years. So.
Thank you, Tibby. I just had to do that. Let's pray.